There is a word that came through just a little bit ago, and I thought the word was compassion, but the more it clarified itself, the word was actually compression. And I was guided to reflect on the ways that we compress ourselves and others for a sense of connection or control. And ultimately, to try to find or establish a sense of safety in maybe a new connection, a new environment, both. I'm in the middle of a week-long metaphysical retreat right now, and I was in the middle of a group meditation when I knew it was time to come out of that and deliver this message. If you're newer here on this channel, welcome. How this typically works is I receive messages and insights from my lived experiences mirrored back to me through my internal and external journey. I sit and contemplate, process, integrate, synthesize, all the good things. And I share that wisdom with you because everything is so connected, and what is going on in my life or the people's lives around me can also be a reflection of something that you might want to take with you as well. So use your discernment, but if this video found you, there's a good chance there's something in it for you. So compression. This word compression feels like an energetic tenseness. It's a gripping, it is a contraction of self. And I've noticed this feeling, and I think this is what's referred to when we say we're playing small or we're shrinking, hiding. All of those words imply a withdrawal. And I think our energy kind of gets pulled back in and held very tightly within ourselves when we compress ourselves, whether that is to feel safer when we're in a vulnerable and perhaps new situation, when we're maybe interacting with people we don't know, when we feel out of place. And we also use that mechanism, that energetic mechanism, to try to control others too. That's what I've become really aware of this last week. The last video at the end, we started to talk about the idea of judgment, and I've had some time to since reflect on that and how I feel like it almost seems like there's a fine line between judgment and discernment, and why in spiritual circles discernment is perceived as a good thing, but judgment is perceived as a bad thing. But maybe they're just two sides of the same coin, or two expressions of the same tool, but on a different sides of the spectrum. You know, I'm remembering this conversation about judgment that we had started and how this word compression is fitting into that. Compression is the energetic of judgment. When we use that flip side of the negative side of judgment to try to energetically bring someone else down, because that is ultimately what is happening when we do that. When we project our judgments onto other people, we're trying to bring them down energetically, because something that they're doing or saying or just the way that they are makes us feel. I just had someone knock on the door, and in the middle of that message asking if we had used our fireplace. And so I went to go look in the fireplace, and there's a bag there with some, I guess, tinder or papers to burn. And the tag on the bag just says, "Just light the bag." So we'll come back to that. So as I was saying, judgment is how we energetically try to control another person, because something that they've said or done or just their beingness makes us feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort is an activation of something that is within us that we maybe don't feel as free or embodied in, something that we actually desire deep down to express, and we see it in that person And because we haven't integrated it fully yet, it makes us really uncomfortable. I think there is this light and airy side to when we see someone else maybe having something that we want or inspiring us. We, sometimes we take that in a positive sense, like we actually get that sense of upliftment and we receive what they're actually giving. But the thing with judgment is that it is a form of resistance that completely blocks us while it's there from receiving what's on the other side of that. And I've just noticed myself and others here at this retreat as we've gotten to immerse ourselves into new connections, new experiences, new tools, new ways of thinking, and tons of different kinds of people, just how active this faculty of judgment really is. So on one hand, it's normal and natural for the ego side of ourselves, the human side of ourselves. And yes, we have, so much we can do with that and transmute that. We can use that as fuel, our little tinder bag over there. We can use that as fuel for the fire of transformation, transmutation, and purification. It was very interesting being in a community of people who we could actually talk about these things openly, notice our judgments, notice ourselves having the same judgments about the same experience, and yet all of us moving through our own internal process of leaning in to that discomfort just to see what's on the other side. And I was talking to, it was me and two other people. So all three of us had that same experience of having projected judgment onto the speaker and the facilitator, the same judgments. And we all, through our own ways, ended up having a really profound experience because we said yes to participating in it, even despite the discomfort. And this is something that has been repetitively shown to me, even through the example I shared in the last video. When we find ourselves in situations that are perhaps seemingly like not what we asked for, it's seemingly like on the surface it's not aligned or it's not perfect or it's not optimal or it's not something you would have just sort of walked into willingly. When you're sort of put into those situations, you have a choice of whether to, walk away, which is in some cases can be really honoring for yourself and loving for yourself. But then also in other cases, it can be really powerful to remain in that discomfort and be with it and let that wall be acknowledged and sort of dissolved so that you can step into the love and the beauty and the light that's on the other side of that judgment. This has happened for me like almost every day since I've found myself in a new place, having just moved to Southern California and being constantly surrounded by new people, being thrown into uncertainty, really, because when we're in a familiar environment, we already have figured out what we like, what we don't like, who we like, how we like to spend our time. And so we create our routines that give us that sense of like we gravitate towards doing what we like. And what I found is that after 6 years of living in the same place, I had gotten really comfortable in those pathways. And I forgot just how uncomfortable it is to actually be open, for everything around you to be different, and to have to sort of figure your way around again. I used to travel a lot in my earlier 20s, early like mid 20s, and this time in my life really reminds me of that. So I wonder if there's a place for you, those of you watching, where maybe you're also noticing that you're holding judgments. And the hard thing is not to judge yourself for having judgments, and then seeing what's on the other side of that, if it feels right for you and right for the moment. I was talking to my best friend yesterday, and we were talking about what it was like for me to move. And I said, it made me realize that I've been using my intuition as for protection and for safety. We've talked about this in my other videos. And actually in last month's monthly activation for intuition, we talked about how intuition kind of gets hijacked in our early life if we had an unstable upbringing or were very sensitive and couldn't manage the environment, didn't have the tools or resources. That intuition often is used to try to create a sense of safety. And we talk so much about that in the monthly activation, which you can actually still watch now if you wanted to join. So I'll leave that in the description if you want to see it. And yeah, just is interesting, like how our judgments and our preferences can actually keep us in a safe place, but also at the same time hide us from or prevent us from having some really beautiful experiences just behind that protection. And I think about this with dating as well. Like we've been on this train of talking about conscious love, conscious partnership, and this concept of judgment totally applies there too, right? It is one of the perfect examples of how we close ourselves off to possible connections. And it's interesting, because in the last video, we had talked about how it's okay to have your preferences, and that preferences are, I guess you could say, a form of judgment that helps you to discern who the best person is to support you. And we didn't get to talk about this last time, but I've been since thinking about discernment and how, well, if we were just neutral about everything and had no judgments, no opinions, no feelings about anything, would that not be more of a suppression of our natural human tendencies rather than an allowing? And also, how would we navigate through the world if we didn't like or dislike or have any sort of charge about anything? How would we move through this electromagnetic soup that we're in? And I know that attraction, at least romantic attraction, isn't always the best thing to follow, but it gives some direction in which you can learn some lessons. But we're not talking about that level of intensity and extremeness, like even just basic forms of your interests and your passions and your hobbies and your values and the things that put you in the spaces and the places and frequency of the people that you attract. If you didn't have any of those, would we have anything to connect over? I think the whole picture of oneness is that idyllic sort of state of perfect harmony, which from a metaphysical point of view is always what that is our baseline and our basic truth, that it's our job to express more of. But these are some of the thoughts that are coming to me during this retreat. And so I urge us to all take some time to contemplate that. If you feel called, this topic of judgment and discernment and where to ease up on those things and where to allow them to form healthy boundaries and be a guiding force in your life. And I think that answer is really going to be different for everybody. I think it does depend on your unique energetic makeup and what your past patterns have been. Because somebody, for example, who, let's say, spent their entire life just conforming to their environment and having a lack of self-identity and difficulty knowing themselves, I think somebody like that would really benefit from developing a deeper sense of discernment and understanding their likes and dislikes, their true thoughts and feelings, their emotions, their opinions, and speaking their truth. I think that path of authenticity would be really powerful for someone who has that sort of soul evolution. And maybe for someone who has been very strong-willed, very opinionated, very stubborn, and kind of in their own world, if that has been their whole sort of life's journey, I think somebody like that would really benefit from softening into understanding other people's perspectives and allowing more of that in, versus it just being like a one-track mind. So there's really a lot of nuance, and I don't think there's a wrong or a right. And even when it comes to choosing your partner, that is such an individual and specific and sometimes continuous process where you're learning more about yourself every day. You're learning more about the other person. I think at the end of the day, like, you get to decide. If there's one thing I've learned from this week is that people are always going to judge. You can say anything and do anything and choose anything, and someone's going to have something to say about it. And so, one thing I realized a little bit ago was that that's a good thing. As a former people pleaser, I feel like that's actually the most liberating thing to really embody and realize that if you're going to be judged for every single thing that you do, then just do it. There's no way that you can make everyone happy. And you don't have to. You shouldn't have to. If any way you cut the cake, somebody's going to have something to say about it, then just do it your own way. If your truth upsets other people, then good for you for being so anchored in yourself, for even having the courage to share and express who you are. And second, like, it's an opportunity for you as the one who is like fielding the negativity to practice seeing past the judgment. That these people who are bothered by you are actually sharing on an energetic level. They are sharing their desire with you. They're sharing their desire for the freedom that you have. It also helps to remember that we're all just doing our best out here. And there's always going to be something we can do better. There's always going to be more lessons to learn. And that's okay. Being in that state of compression for a long time, it's going to be a process to kind of soften and expand back into your normal space-taking form, and to learn how to decompress and uncompress other people that we've been kind of burdening with our energetic judgments. So it's a different way of relating and connecting, ultimately coming back to just realizing that we all want the same things and we're not all that different. The experience I was talking about earlier with the 3 people where we all had the same judgments and the same profound experience afterwards, what I noticed is, for me, that in that moment of connection, we had a partner exercise and it was profound. And we both felt very seen and just amazed by how it worked, even though I was very skeptical. In that moment, after we had shared that deep soul connection and soul recognition moment, the judgments were gone. And that's when I realized that it's love and connection that we want the most. And it's because we feel like that's at risk, or there's some threat of uncertainty that might take that away and disconnect us, that brings out the judgment. The judgment is the protection that says, this is really uncomfortable and I don't understand, and maybe I don't want to understand. And so I feel safer pushing this person away with my judgments, distancing myself, compressing us both so that we create that sense of disconnection before it happens in real exchange, to protect ourselves, because something that we create is more predictable than something that quote unquote happens to us from the outside. I feel like this, again, applies to all types of situations in life, whether it's, connection of all kinds, with strangers, with family, with friends, with people you're just meeting, with coworkers, with romantic love. Like, we all just want to feel connected and loved, ultimately. And I think when the judgments come down and we can get to that place of remembering that there is a bigger picture and the source of love that we're all connected to and never changes, then we can give ourselves the experience of that and create it with others and remember that even if you don't think you could ever have something in common with another person or that you don't ever think you could connect to this person because of this and that and whatever, maybe that thought and judgment itself is the exact thing that's blocking it from happening. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you're doing well out there in the world, and it's really nice to see this channel growing and resonating with so many people. And thank you for your comments. I do read as many comments as I can, and though I can't respond to them all, I really do appreciate hearing from you and feeling the energetic resonance all across the world. So thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah.